that woman right there. Caitlin Clark named the 2024 Naismith National Player of the Year yesterday. It's the second straight year she wins that honor. This after Iowa, of course, clinches a spot in the Final Four on Monday. The following morning, I had Rebecca Lobo here, and I asked her about Caitlin Clark and the GOAT debate in women's basketball. She had a fascinating answer. Listen.
When you get into the GOAT conversation, does she need to win a national championship in order to be considered the GOAT? I don't think so. I think she needs to win multiple national championships to be in that kind of a conversation. Because when you look at the history of the game, Candace Parker won 2 championships at Tennessee. Diana Taurasi won 3 championships. Breanna Stewart won 4 national championships. Not only won 4 championships, she was the most outstanding performer in 4 Final Fours. Caitlin is an incredible player. She has done more in terms of bringing attention and eyeballs to the women's game than any player we have ever seen. That's a mere fact. But when you want to talk about the GOAT conversation and you add championships to the mix, you have to understand the history of the game.
And certainly no one does that better than Rebecca Lobo, but you do as well, Monica. So when you hear this, and obviously everyone delighted with the attention that this has brought to the sport, but this is the kind of conversation that comes with all of this increased attention.
I love it. Let's do it.
If she wins on Sunday, if she knocks off Connecticut on Friday night, and then potentially an unbeaten South Carolina on Sunday night, who's been the best team in the country all year long, if you come in here on Monday morning, will you say to me, Greeny, she is the greatest of all time?
I will say that she has probably had the greatest all-time college career, college year, if I can boil it down to 1 year. I get what Rebecca Lobo is saying, and don't get me wrong, in a vacuum, you probably would take every single one of the players that she just mentioned over Caitlin Clark. But I do think something is very unique that's happening in the women's game that you have to acknowledge. The last 5 years, we've had 5 different NCAA championships on the women's side. You got to go back to 92 through 96 for the last time that happened. And so the players that she just rattled off are at these historically excellent institutions for women's basketball and dominated the landscape. For so long, Greeny, we have clamored for this idea of parity in the women's game, and even Gino Auriemma last night, talking to our guy, Scott Van Pelt, admitted that where we are right now is a beautiful place and there is more parity. Caitlin is doing this largely with no other All-American, no highly ranked teammate. Diana Taurasi, oh, she got to play alongside Sue Bird. Breanna Stewart, oh yeah, Nafisa Collier was on that team. Candace Parker, you could go down that roster and pick your highly ranked women's basketball standout athlete. So I do understand what Rebecca Lobo is saying, and I think that is probably why some folks have bristled a little bit in terms of this conversation, because there is so much history and so much star power prior to this moment. But when you look at the team that Caitlin Clark is potentially pulling, you'd be hard-pressed to say that this is not one of the greatest runs in a GOAT-type qualifier from a single individual.
It's going to be spectacular. You'll see it tomorrow night. She's back on the floor against one of those traditional powerhouses. You mentioned it. And the head-to-head matchup with Paige Beckers. The women's Final Four tomorrow night. NC State taking on undefeated South Carolina. Again, the Gamecocks have been the best team from jump this season. And then there's the matchup, Paige Beckers and Caitlin Clark, UConn and Iowa. Pre-game coverage starts tomorrow night at 6 on ESPN.